And welcome to the DevSec 2023 podcast, sponsored by our good friends at Cisco. I'm Alan Dale. With me as always, my good buddy Jerry Carew. We are Gale Force Winds. Alex, you brought a book. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what it is that you do.
So EXA is Canada's leading firm that helps out with proposals and capture support. So we help companies win huge programs, usually $100 million, billion-dollar programs in that area. And we've been doing this for over 20 years. EXA's been around for 35 years. And I've been doing this for, well, I don't want to count how many years I've been doing this, but so it's one of those things, you know, when you're in college or high school, no one ever says, when I grow up, I want to write proposals. So it's one of those things that we tend to back into, and it's certainly a career that I backed into. I never set out saying, this is what I want to do. So it's the company helps our clients go after big programs, and we have a whole cycle, what we call from first contact to contract. And so the first contact is when our customers become aware of a potential program coming down the stream. And so then they need to start thinking about, how are we going to win this? What's our win strategy? Do we have to do teaming with other companies? How are we going to shape the requirements? And so we get involved in all of that. And it's a bit of a trickle approach. We don't do a lot of work. We do some support. Sometimes we get heavily engaged. Most of the times it's a background support function. Then when the draft RFP comes out, we start stepping up. We take a look at the draft RFP and we say, well, here's the requirements that they're asking for. Here's what you have. Here are the gaps. And we look at that from a solution perspective. We look at it from a proposal and a document perspective, from a capability perspective. Do you have the resources to do that? Do you even have a war room to be able to put together to go after a program of this size? And then when the final RFP comes out, that's when everyone goes full tilt. We do a lot of what we do is risk management and just making sure that all of the millions of tiny little things that have to be done get done, so that you don't get disqualified for a tiny little thing.
Alex, a simple question.
Yeah.
How many pages would an RFP like that be?
Some of them are over 10,000. So the RFP document itself might only be 1,000 or 2,000 pages, but then it makes references to what's called the SAC clauses. So those are government terms and conditions that you have to go to. Sometimes they make references to ISO and other industry terms. They also make a lot of references to D&D specifications. So when you add all of those up, you can easily exceed 10,000 pages in the RFP. And if you miss one little requirement, you can be gone. So one of the things that we do is we bring the tools that are necessary to comb through all of those requirements and then put them into neat little piles, and then you can sort them, you can filter them, you can assign them to people, you can decide who's doing what and how much have they accomplished. And so we have tools that manage that to minimize that risk.
You know, the whole process is clunky and junky, and,
yeah,
right? And,
it is.
The people normally responding to the RFPs have 10 other jobs that they need to do, right? And
yeah.
So vital that somebody can come in and give vision and a pathway to kind of clear the clutter, because there's a lot of clutter. The first time you open an RFP, you want to give up. Right?
Yeah,
you know
yeah.
what I mean?
No, you're right.
Yeah.
And so we do two kinds of things to that. The first thing is that we provide structure in the midst of chaos. So it is chaotic, and so we kind of provide a skeleton, if you will, and then people start working off that skeleton. They start putting the foundations around that. And without that skeleton, everyone's kind of running in different directions. So that's one of the things we do. The second thing that we do is we really help with leadership, because in most cases, the people who worked on a proposal have been voluntold. They had some job yesterday which they like, that's why they're working for the company, and then today they're on a proposal. And remember, no one ever says, I want to grow up and write proposals. So you have a team of people who have never worked together before, So there's those kinds of interpersonal frictions. You have a team that they don't really know what they're doing because they've never done this before. They don't have the skills, and so you have a leadership problem where you have to inspire these people to make no mistakes. And so we help out with the leadership level of the organization, and we coach them on how to run a program like that. And so that's at the leadership level. At the working level, we help them with all of the tools and the things that we were talking about in order to get that done.
You know, Alex, sometimes the RFPs are so constrained, they're so in a box. How can a company separate themselves by providing unique approaches to the solution? You know, words like agile, procurement, and things come into play, but how does a company, through that really restrictive process, stand out in the mix?
So it really depends, and it's harder in Canada than it is in the U.S. So in the U.S., and my book talks about this quite a bit. In the U.S., they sell a lot, because in the U.S. you can't ignore the requirements, but you can bend the requirements a little bit. Mm-hmm. And a bidder can say, hey, I know you asked for this, but this is better. And even though it's not what you asked for, and even though it's not necessarily compliant, it's really what you want. And so you can win a program that way. In Canada, the requirements are very strict. So it's if the requirements provide very little leeway, then there's very little you can do in terms of answering your question to address that. So the sell happens sort of whether, so we use things called win themes. And when an evaluator, they have an evaluation team, and they're cloistered in a room somewhere, and they're going through 3 or 30 proposals, and they're going through this one. We use a win theme. And the purpose of the win theme is after the evaluator reads a long, dry, technical description of something, then at the very end, there's this value statement that says, so this is why this is the best solution for you. And when they go to their evaluation tool, it's an electronic tool, when they go and they are thinking, should I give these guys a 7 or an 8? Yeah. So what we do is we make sure that there's that little sell statement at the end. You can't do sales pitch all throughout. They'll just get angry. But if you just leave a reminder, this is why this is important to you, and this is why you should select us, they're going to pick an 8 instead of a 7. So it's a little nuanced, but that's the approach that we take.
Alex, when do companies normally engage you? And I guess that's probably based on the size of the company too, right? So
in part.
Yeah, so when do companies normally reach out and say, Alex, I need help with this?
So we have 3 different kinds, 3 categories of clients. We have what I call the storefront clients who show up and say, hey, never heard of you, let's give it a try, and then we never see them again. We have repeat clients who will come back whenever they need something, and those ones usually get in touch with us hopefully before the final RFP drops. We have had clients that say, hey, we're already 3 weeks into the RFP, and now we realize, oh my God, we need help. And we don't like those engagements because you're trying to build an airplane while you're flying it, but we'll do it. We don't shy away from it, we just don't like it. We then have strategic clients where they actually build EXA's capabilities into their business development cycle. And those ones we'll meet with quarterly, and they'll say, we're looking at a program 2 years down the road. And we'll say, that's fine, we'll lock you in on that. Anyone else who comes to us will say, sorry, we're locked in. And you know, we have that arrangement, and they reciprocate by coming to us rather than going to anyone else before. So it depends on the client.
Right, smart business, right? If a company is forward thinking, looking over the horizon, and some of these RFPs, as you mentioned, are huge amounts of money.
Yeah.
It behooves you to be 2 years out thinking about the process to get there, right?
Yeah, it really is, and so. We find that the clients that are looking 2 years out, they are the ones who also will ask us to come in and help out with the capture support a little bit. Yeah. So we would never take the role of capture leader. That's so much of a critical strategic function that's always our customer's role. But we'll support that.
Sure.
So if there's document development, or you need some help in just doing some market research and stuff like that, we can do that.
Right.
We'll also help out with win strategies and so on. So all of that happens before the RFP comes out.
The book, tell us a little bit about the book. Why should people buy that?
So the book, I don't try to compete against other standards or organizations that tell you how to win a single proposal. They know their stuff, and you should go to them when that's what you need to do. This book tells a company or walks a company through the processes that it needs to understand to win program after program after program. So not just one, but the leadership principles that a successful company has to apply in order to maximize its win rate. And so that's what the book's all about. So it's both a philosophy in terms of leadership, and there is some process in terms of how to implement these things. But we talk about proposal leadership, and we talk about capture leadership in the book, because we think leadership is so much more important than management. Management is doing things right. It's a control function, making sure that you get them done on time, on budget, and in quality context. Leadership is inspiring people to make the decisions to do the right things at the right time. And that's really what the book is about.
It sounds like it's a type of book that should be on every corporate boardroom table.
I certainly think so.
Yeah.
And so we're pushing this book to executives, to leaders, to practitioners, and frankly, I think it would be very valuable to people on the government side, because a lot of them don't understand what industry goes through in order to respond to an RFP. I think the corollary is true. I don't think industry has a clue what government goes through to finally put an RFP together, right?
Yeah.
But if certain government procurement organizations understood what's involved in putting that together, they might approach it differently.
Right.
Alex, I had to ask this question.
Sure.
You say the RFP process is chaotic. I can't help but think about a startup, which is inherently chaotic.
Yeah.
You do work with startups at all?
Generally, no.
No.
And the reason for that, unless they're very well-funded startups. So we have actually worked with one of those. The problem is to bring a team in with the caliber of people that we do. So let me take a sidestep for a moment. When you're going after a $100 million program, which is around the range where we work in, $100 million plus, your capture costs are going to be somewhere between 2 to 3%. Now, not all of that goes to EXA, right? That's your total capture cost, but a significant portion of that goes to EXA. When you're going with a startup, they can't afford a $300,000 to $1 million price tag to bring a really high-powered team in to do that, unless they have some benefit funding that allows them to do that. So generally, we work with big primes.
I get it.
Yeah.
Well, so how do people get the book, and how can people access EXA?
So to get the book, go to Amazon.ca
Yep.
and just search for the title. If you just search for Win Big the EXA Way, or search for my name, Alex McPhail, it's the first thing that pops up on Amazon.ca. You can reach me, and so my email for that is alex@theexaway.ca, all one word, theexaway.ca.
Right.
Yeah.
And based out of Canada?
Yes, we're in Ottawa,
Okay.
and we have literal coast-to-coast coverage, so we have people from Halifax all the way out to Vancouver. We also have some people who are working internationally in the States and elsewhere, so we're a distributed company. We'll work on site or we'll work remotely.
And of course, really paying close attention to what interests the government of Canada in the moment.
Yeah.
Must really fascinate you.
It does, and so we're seeing trends. I just had a discussion yesterday, a presentation, and we're seeing some trends in government, and they're not necessarily great trends. So we're seeing proposed RFPs for major procurements are getting bigger, and they're becoming more complex. And the amount of work that you have to do in order to respond to them is becoming greater. So it's not just that the RFP itself is more complex, but they're demanding more work. So I'll give you an example on a program that we supported last year. It was a very large program, over $5 billion. And so you can imagine the cost structure of that program is huge. Okay, so you spend a lot of money just putting the price together. But then on top of that, they wanted 10,000 data points that did cost justification, so that when they sit down with the winning bidder, they can negotiate and say, well, we see you've justified your cost of travel for this quarter of this year. Is that, why did you do that? And if you 10,000 points, if it takes half a day to do a point, just think of the extra work that many bidders, multiple bidders, put into that. So those are the trends that we're seeing that sadly actually make our business even more profitable. I mean, that's not what I want. I would love to be out of business someday, just because there's no need for it.
Alex, incredible service that you're providing. To be honest with you, it's absolutely vital that companies get engaged with you early in the process if they're hoping for a big win. And so very important that the leadership understands the whole strategy. I love the way you articulate. Clearly, you've been around this game for a long time. There it is, big win, win big, the EXA way. Okay. Alex, an absolute pleasure to have you on.
Thank you very much. It's been a delight.
Alex, I don't normally get excited about RFP conversations. This has been a breath of fresh air. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.